Hi there. You're watching Grumpy Opinions. Outlander is a historical TV period soap opera about the people of Fraser's Ridge and their ongoing melodramas, which hopefully are going to turn into an actual ongoing story at some point during the series. Fingers crossed. Episode 3, Temperance, starts out with Roger noticing some local kids playing baby Moses with his nephew-in-law, twice removed baby Henri Christian. Then he manages to rescue the bairn from a badly composited death and finds out the kids think he's a demon, so he does a wee baptism on the spot and tells them off about it. But obviously that's not the end of that, because it's a big deal. And it all falls into the ongoing strife between Parsley and Fungus, what with him still drinking like he's absolutely parched, and the pair of them end up following out massively after she tips something over his head, since he just can't stop drinking and blaming himself for everything, culminating him in having a massive blowout with the random wifey at a rent-paying party, which Tom luckily manages to defuse. But anyway, Fungus is so ashamed that he ends up trying to suicide himself out of the TV show, but luckily Jamie stops him with a few reassuring words and some hugs. Luckily, the kids are a bit of an easier fix, as Jamie manages to sort them out with a choice of flick the baby or touch the burning poker, and Roger sorts out wee baby German and then the son of the cute widow who he's promised to look after. Oh aye, careful there son, as he manages to find a big frog in her milk. That's not a euphemism. Anyway, he tops it all off with a nice wee sermon about Moses. Everyone kind of feels happy about things, and clearly he's becoming a bit of a minister to this wee community. Elsewhere, it's spring and love seems to be in the air, so you've got the twins and they're getting hotter and hotter over little Lizzie, and Malva's started to succumb to the rugged native charms of wee Ian and his unchristian, ungodly ways. Oh aye. But the meat of the episode is actually about Tom Christie, returning to get his dodgy hand fixed, but he won't take the ether and instead has Jamie recite Bible stuff with him as Claire hacks, slashes and stitches away at his paw. And during the evening, she has another flash of creepy zombie Brown, and she can't have her usual ether binge because Tom's in the bed and he's in the room, so she can't knock herself sideways. So instead she ends up having a chat with him about life, witchcraft and all that sort. Then she goes back upstairs and has a chat with Jamie about the Ardsmuir days and how much he missed her back then. Then a wee bit later, Tom comes back and he's healing up well, so she says, oh well there you go, there's a copy of the book Tom Jones. No, different Tom Jones. It's a book called Tom Jones. Anyway, to be honest, Christie would probably be right into Delilah. But that doesn't quite have the right effect, as Tom seems to think it's basically some kind of porn because he's very puritanical and it's a comedy. And again, he's got his hand back, so he starts giving it loudly through Malva's backside with his belt. Oh, you remember there's a war on? The show remembers that in the last 2 minutes because the Boston Tea Party just happened and the Crown have AOK'd the request for guns, so Jamie has now a whole arsenal of rifles to give to the Cherokee. Nice one. Can't wait to see what happens next, as everybody stands really awkwardly in the crane shot to show that this is the end of the episode. Okay. So what did I think? Well, this week on Dr. Claire Medicine Woman Who Lives on Little Ridge in the Prairie... Okay, I'm kidding. But anyway, it was basically all character stuff and ongoing soap opera. Now, I'm not going to go over the same ground too much as I did last time, but let's get into what was actually really good this week. So kicking off with some technical stuff that I liked. Right, Jamie's scar, the one from when he got burned, remember that guy? Yeah, well, I don't actually remember seeing that for a while, but yeah, it's nice that they remember that. They always remember about doing his back and stuff, but Jamie's had so many different fights that he must be about 75% scar tissue at this point. And although I'm sure there's a few scars and nicks and things missing, I'm sure I remember his shoulder getting clawed by that bear when I was looking at the clip for that earlier, but that seems to have gone, but I'm not worried about that. Also, in terms of prosthetics and stuff, hand surgery, that was really solid. I'm not going to show the stuff, but it wasn't gratuitous, but it was also pretty realistically nasty when Claire's literally in and about cutting and moving Tom's tendons in his hands. It's pretty Terminator-esque stuff. Anyway, I like also that, we got a whole bit about Fungus talking about literal fungus.
Des champignons, les chanterelles, et voilà les morilles.
And so did Jamie.
Enough Woody is there.
Somebody who wrote this episode was clearly hungry and likes mushrooms. But I'll also give credit to the show actually spending time on Fungus and Parsley. I think this was an interesting storyline that I kind of, in a weird way, I kind of wish this storyline had gone on a little bit longer and actually been more of a theme maybe running through it, because it felt like they'd set it up a wee bit and then they just kind of belted it out in this one episode. Now, again, I'm saying I really like the scene with Jamie talking to his adopted French son, talking him down from his suicide, but again, I think if everything's suddenly cool with the pair now, just on the basis of that, then I'll be a wee bit disappointed, but I feel that's probably what's going to happen. Similarly, I really liked the fact that the episode took time to have everything slow down and let like Claire and Tom have this long conversation. And similarly, then like Jamie and Claire had this big talk about Ardsmuir that was really interesting, and Jamie being surprisingly frank about some of the Highlanders going jail gay when they were inside. I mean, obviously not him, obviously never Jamie, no, because he only has eye for Claire. But no, I mean, I like the fact that the actors got time to breathe and run with his plot. I mean, especially, as I said, Mark Jones, who frankly, somebody give this guy an Emmy, because he's just great. He's really good on screen whenever he's doing anything. And I kind of hope that they're going somewhere good with his character, because if he suddenly turns around and he breaks evil at some point and tries to like rape Claire or eat and murder Jamie or something like that, that would just be boring. And there's a lot of nuance here, and hopefully they do something really interesting, because it's been fairly captivating with his character before, because it's not black and white, he's a complex person. And as I said, I don't really know where this is going, but I like that there's an attempt to split loyalties between him and Jamie versus him and Claire, and also the whole thing with the Browns tempting them as well, and the people from his little camp. I also really hope that this weird sore hand stretching almost sexual scene isn't anything we should be reading into, but I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't think there's going to be a romance between Tom and Claire on the cards, but that would be a good setup. On the other hand, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but this week felt like peak Galbanonic padding this time. I mean, the sort of stuff that was all but cut out of seasons 2 and 3. I mean, I give season 2 an awful lot of stick from the France stuff for it being a bit bitty and scattershot and some of it being a bit thin. And it turns out that was because there was whole chapters of like fluff and them going to parties and stuff that added nothing but pages of busy work and then stuff that all apparently was summarily adapted out of the script, and it never ended up in the show. So this season, we're 3 episodes in and it feels like that's all they're actually putting into the show. And I mean, I'm not complaining that there's some soap opera stuff. I mean, as I've said before, that's what keeps people watching shows. The character interactions, the relationships. I mean, everything from Firefly to The West Wing to Cheers has something like that in it. I mean, half the reason people watched Friends was to figure out whether or not Ross and Rachel were ever going to get together. And, I was half kidding last week when I said this is Little House on the Prairie. But this week I'm not kidding. Seriously, that's what this feels like. And as I said, I don't know where the story's going at all at this point. I mean, the fact that there was that utterly placatory, oh yeah, the war scene right at the end does make me wonder if this wasn't drastically in a different order at this point, like the story beats weren't all in a completely different order, like maybe in the books. Because, I mean, some of the scenes in the last week feel like they should have been mixed in with this week, which is fine if you're watching like a movie, but, in terms of it, they wanted to keep everything episodically together. Now, I understand that. But also, the stuff they're choosing to put in here feels like something that's like a scene from the book that people love. Like, I mean, what was the whole thing with Roger and that frog? I mean, that was just weird. That whole scene was just weird. Now, yeah, it felt strange, a weird idea, a strange looking frog, and I'm pretty sure frogs don't make that noise. As I've said many times, I've not read the books, but I did look online at the plot for the last book after the end of the last series, Fiery Cross, and I was really amazed that half the stuff that was in that season didn't occur in the book at that point. It clearly was in the next book, the 6th book. And some people in comments, I'm sure, mentioned last season that they had moved about stuff in the book plots. But I can understand why there's a lack of action in this at this point, because if all the Dread Pirate Bonnet stuff from last season was actually supposed to be in this book, then that's a really weird way to adapt these stories, because you'd assume they would have waited till there was something more interesting to adapt in this story as well. And yeah, I mean, again, please don't spoil anything in the comments. I would like things to be a surprise. But yeah, I mean, if you are frustrated by the general languidity of this season, I agree wholeheartedly. And on a technical side, some shonky stuff this week. I mean, the baby basket going over the cliff looked awful. I'm pretty sure like the baby's dwarf features kind of came and went from shot to shot. And even like when Dead Brown appeared, it looked like it was kind of badly superimposed. And I get it, special effects during times of COVID have probably been hard, and I didn't give a free pass to films like Spider-Man No Way Home for some of the really bad chunky effects in that as well, and that was like a multi-billion-pound movie. But I mean, I accept that some things are tougher to film and to sort out because of the practical issues of COVID. But this week, I mean, it just looked weak, frankly, and the show has done better before. I mean, it's had its bad times, but Also, while we're on that side of things, just a quick point about the makeup, especially on Malva and Brianna. Now, I mean, I'm not saying anything about the actors here. They both do really well, but both of them look like they've got like some kind of yellow jaundice foundation on. I mean, it may be just be the way they've coloured these episodes, but specifically them. I mean, look at Malva standing next to John Bell. He looks normal, like a normal human, and she looks like a mannequin whose skin's all one colour. And I've noticed the same thing on Sophie Skelton in previous episodes as well. I mean, maybe it's just to do with the particular skin tones of the actor and the makeup they use with them, but it's just bizarre. Also, as I said, there's some great scenes in this episode, like all the talking scenes, but pacing-wise, they were all clumped together, and that's a bit of a problem, because, like, we had Claire and Tom, then Claire and Jamie, then Claire and Tom again, almost straight away, all for long dialogue scenes. And what was even longer was, like, there was that whole weird bit with Claire getting up to then go and give the cats some milk nonsense. I mean, what was the point in that? That scene didn't need to be in the story, because I'm not sure what that actually added. Because, I mean, at first I assumed, like, that they were setting up that he might think it was a witch's familiar. But then literally she turns around dialogue and says, "It's not my familiar, it's just a cat." And he's like, "No, I know, I don't think you're a witch." Why are we building that up? What is the point? You know, if you're going to set up something like that, set it up and then let the audience guess. Don't set it up and then immediately go, no, that's not where we're going with this. You're wasting my time, show. Please don't waste my time. As I said, we're 3 episodes in, and thus far, the story of this season really isn't actually heading anywhere obvious yet. So, I mean, hopefully something is going to happen next week with a view to carrying the story in a new direction, but currently, I will admit I'm struggling a wee bit to maintain a lot of the interest here. Conversely, I've been watching recently Picard Season 2, and no, I'm not going to be reviewing that because it's still terrible, and the first season was bad enough. But I've also been watching both Archive 81 and a show called Only Murders in the Building, both of which are actually weird podcasty murder shows, one that's horror and the other that's a comedy. But the thing is, all of these shows, they all get going with a central story that drags you along, and that, Outlander, that currently is what you are not managing to do, so please do better. Anyway, till next time, these have been my grumpy opinions.